Hello, my crafty friends. Well, today we are going to do a bit of watercoloring to create 3 different Christmas cards. Hi, it's Lynn Dunn from Stamptastic Designs. Thanks so much for joining me today. In this episode of Stamptastic TV, I have 3 different ways that you can use watercoloring to create a fun background for your cards. Now, these are very simple ideas and you do not need very many supplies to create them. Now, the cards in this video feature the Christmas Lights stamp set from Stampin Up. So this is the stamp set I will be using to create some of the embossed designs in the background of the card. And then I'm also using a sentiment from the Brightest Glow stamp set, but you can use any stamp set you have on hand. Okay, so let's talk about how to make this card. So what we're going to do is just a basic watercolor wash in the background, and then we're going to do some embossing over that watercolor wash to create this very simple but beautiful card design. So let me show you how to make it. So the supplies we will be using, we have a piece of garden green cardstock for the base of our card. So it's just the standard card size, 5.5 by 8.5, and scored in the middle at 4 1/4 inches to create the base of the card. Then I have a piece of watercolor paper. So I recommend using watercolor paper, especially for a watercolor wash. So this is a 3.5 by 5-inch piece. And then I just have a little piece of designer paper that I'll be using just to decorate the card. This is 3/4 inches wide and it's 4.5 inches long. So we're going to start with our watercolor. So basically what you're going to do is take your ink pad. So for this one I'm using garden green. I'm just going to open it up and I'm going to add just a little bit of garden green ink to the inside here. So I'm just going to put a little drop on here. So I'm just using my ink pad cover to just kind of hold the ink. You don't ever want to use your watercolored painter. So this is full of water in here. You don't ever want to use that on your ink pad. So your ink cover makes a nice spot to just kind of capture all this water. So I'm just going to dilute this a little bit with a little bit of water. And basically what we're going to do is just kind of start at the top, and you're just going to kind of squeeze the aqua painter as you go along and just create, you know, a fun little background. And don't worry if you get darker in some spots compared to others. That's what gives it just kind of a really fun look. So we'll just kind of go back and forth all the way down, just adding our water. And as you do this, you just kind of squeeze this aqua painter just a little bit, just so that you can get some water out as you're spreading this ink. And then we're just going to let this dry. So while this is drying, I'll just tell you to clean your painter. I usually just squeeze it into a piece of paper towel and it cleans it out really nice. And then you can just take your paper towel and just wipe up the excess ink from the inside of your ink pad. All right, so now that this is dry, we can go ahead and we can do some embossing on it. So I'm going to be using some Versamark ink. So I'm just going to ink up this tree image. So we're going to stamp it right in the center here. So when you put this Versamark on here, it creates, you know, a sticky little area for you to add your embossing powder. And so all the embossing powder will stick to our image. Now you can't see the image right now, but you will in a minute. So you can see we got that little tree image on there. And I am going to heat this then to set. Okay, so that's it. All I did was heat emboss that image on there. And we are good to go. So we can create our card. So the next thing I did is just took a 3/4 by 4.5 inch piece of pattern paper. So this is from the Sweet Candy Canes DSP pack. And I just adhered it to the left side of my garden green card front. And now I'm just going to add my watercolor paper here. Kind of add this over the top of that little piece. So it just kind of adds a little bit of color. Okay, so that's what it looks like. So the next thing I did is just tied a little piece of twine, wrapped it around the card front twice, and tied it into a little bow. And then I added a little greeting that I did some embossing on. So I just did the embossing on a piece of garden green cardstock. And then for the finishing touch, I just added a little iridescent gem to the top. So that's really it. It's a pretty simple card, but it's just really cute, and it's a fun way to do some watercoloring. Okay, and for card number 2, it's the same kind of process, except for this time, I actually embossed my little snowflake on my watercolor paper first, and then I did the watercoloring over it. So let me show you how to create this one. So I started with a 3.5 by 4.25 inch piece of watercolor paper, and I don't know if you can see, but I embossed that snowflake on here, did some heat embossing, and embossed it in white on this piece of watercolor paper. Is I already have my ink pad all set to go, and I'm using a little bit of Night of Navy, and so we're just gonna start right in the middle here and just kind of go around. And so you can see already it just gives it a really cool look. You can see the embossing coming through. Isn't that fun? So the cool thing about this is it's like an emboss resist technique. So instead of sponging color, all I'm doing is adding water over the top. And of course the ink will not stick to the embossed image. So it just gives it a really cool look. So I'm just going to bring some of this down and spread it around. Okay, so we'll let that one dry. All right, so now that our watercolor image is dry, we can go ahead and create this card. So the first thing I did was just add a 3.5 by 4.5 inch piece of designer paper to my card front. So I adhered this on an angle so that when I go to add this piece, you can kind of see a little bit of it kind of peeking through behind our watercolored image. So it's just kind of a fun way to add your designer paper and give your card a little different look. Then I just added a little bit of twine again, just some white twine. And I used the same Season's Greetings. I just embossed it on some Night of Navy cardstock. And then I just kind of cut it apart and adhered it, you know, towards the bottom of this particular card. And then of course I added one of our iridescent gems right in the center of the snowflake. So again, it's another pretty simple card and just a fun way to watercolor your images. Okay, and here is card number 3. So this time I added a variety of different colors to the background to create this very cool card. So let me show you how I did this one. So for this card, I started with a 4 by 5.25 inch piece of the watercolor paper. And I'm going to use 3 different colors. So this first color that I'm going to be adding is just fresh freesia. So I'm just going to kind of add it in different spots on the card. And so I just added some balmy blue kind of in between, and I overlapped the colors a little bit. So the cool thing about doing this kind of a wash is like I said, you don't have to really get very particular with it because it'll all blend together and it'll give you just a really cool effect. And then the last one that I'm going to add is just a little bit of this Night of Navy. So we'll just kind of go around and add it in different spots. You can even add some in the middle. Just kind of add it all over. So that's kind of what our card looks like. And then what I did is I just dipped this brush into this ink and I just kind of tapped it, lightly tap on my finger, and it gives it like a little splatter in the background. So I have like a little watercolor splatter kind of going all over my card. So I want to get some down here. and it just kind of gives it a fun little effect. Okay, so we'll let this one dry. So now that this is all dry, we can go ahead and add our embossed images in the background. So I'm using 3 different images from the Christmas Lights stamp set, and that's what I will be embossing in white in the background. So I found the best way to do it is to start with one of them. So we'll just take the larger one, and we're just going to stamp it in a variety of different places. So now I'm going to add my embossing powder, and you can see where I stamped the images. Maybe you can't see it, but I can see it. So I just found it's a lot easier to just kind of do it one at a time, you know, one image at a time. So we'll heat these. Okay, so now you can see where I have stamped all those little snowflakes in the white embossing powder. So now we can go ahead and we can add some of the other ones. So all right, so that's what it looks like when it's all embossed. So I have a variety of different snowflake images that I just heat embossed with white embossing powder on my watercolored background. So it just gives it a really pretty look. Okay, so let's go ahead and create the card. So we'll start by adhering this piece to our card front. So I'm just using Night of Navy cardstock for the base of my card. So my card bases are all the same. Now notice how the watercoloring is different. It's going to be different on all of your cards. So just kind of keep that in mind. So the next thing I did is just cut out one of the snowflake images from the Christmas Lights stamp set, so from the bundle. And I'm just going to take a piece of this ribbon, and I'm just going to accordion fold this ribbon behind my snowflake image. Okay, so I have my ribbon behind my snowflake. So now I'm just going to take little pieces of tear and tape, and I'm just going to add those across my little snowflake here. So this tear and tape will help hold that ribbon in place, but then it can also be used to adhere the snowflake to the card front. And so that's what I'm going to do. And then I just created a little greeting on some Night of Navy cardstock, and this I'm just putting right across the center of my snowflake. And then the last thing I did is just take some of these little iridescent dots and just kind of decorated kind of around the snowflake. And that's it. Isn't that beautiful? It just gives it just a beautiful look. And it's a great way to use a variety of colors to create your background. Okay, so there you go. Now you have 3 different ways that you can use watercoloring in your card making. And if you enjoyed these card ideas, feel free to download the printable tutorial. You can find the link in the description below this video. Thanks so much for joining me today. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know by liking it and sharing it with your friends. And leave me a comment below to let me know what you enjoyed most about the video and the cards shared here today. Have a fun and creative day, my friends. Take care.